Welcome to
Tamarindo Podcast.
Hosted by me, Brenda Gonzalez, a fitness coach, political nerd, and nonprofit capacity builder.
And me, Delsy Sandoval, a Guatemalan-American licensed therapist and passionate creativity advocate. Together, we're here to uplift our community through powerful conversations with changemakers, creatives, and healers.
Each week on the pod, we talk politics, culture, and personal development. Listeners call Tamarindo the Advocacy and Self-Love Podcast. Vámonos!
Let's start the show!
This week on Tamarindo, we introduce a new segment discussing news that caught our eye. Plus, we talk presidential election anxiety and consult political commentator Chuck Rocha to help us think through these feelings. Before we start the show, some reminders. Listeners in New York, don't miss your chance to see Latina to Latina Live on March 27th in Brooklyn, featuring author Xochitl Gonzalez. Get all the details at bit.ly/Latinas Live. And listeners in LA, this is your last chance to get your tickets to Amigas Blossoming, as we are so close to selling out. So join us on March 28th in Highland Park. Go to tamarindopodcast.com/events to RSVP. Now on with the show. All right. Hello, Tamarindo listeners. Hi, Delsy. How are you?
Hi, Brenda. So nice to see you doing well. What's going on?
Well, I've decided, and I think you agree, that we sort of been having this, actually you started it, and I think it's great, bringing these articles to talk to our listeners, an article that caught our eye. So I thought that maybe, we ought to try doing that regularly. I really like that. Maybe we call it novedades, whatever news caught our eye. It could be a piece of news, it could be something you heard on the radio or like an article. And I think it's been awesome to have that. So I want to see, do you have an article or something that caught your eye this week?
Yeah, it's really interesting the way that I read, or the way I engage with articles and news sources and things like that. I think it's a little bit backwards in how other folks might engage, because I think people read their favorite news sources and then something catches their eye. For me, it's more like I ponder something, I think about something that's going on with me emotionally or in my life, and then I search for an article to help me gain more information. And so this week I spent some time with a friend. We went out, like girls hanging out, and I noticed that in our conversation I started telling a story that I had told before. Like I started complaining about something and relation with other people, and started, how you do. But I in the middle of talking, I heard myself, and I had this very clear moment of self-awareness where I was like, why am I still talking about this? Like, it's been 10 years. Am I still stuck? So I went on this search trying to find, like, what do I need to do here as a next step? And I found this article about forgiveness. And I want to talk about this and see what your thoughts are, Brenda. And so this is a news source. The news source is the Washington Post. The article is by Tara Parker Pope. I can't say that.
That's a fun name. Tara Parker Pope. I can't say it either.
I think the listeners understand that if you're Spanish speaking, then that's very difficult in English. Tara Parker Pope. And essentially what it was is they conducted this study where they use like these workbook exercises that allowed people to dive into any feelings that they had of like anger, resentment, and then started promoting forgiveness. And this happened over like 5,000 participants across the world. They did this in like Hong Kong, Indonesia, Ukraine, like it was all over the place. It was a randomized study. And over time, they found that the folks that focused their mental energy on forgiveness, on the focus of kind of letting go of some of these long-term resentments, showed massive increases in these markers of mental health and wellness.
I love this.
And I was like, and I looked into this study because it was across people, across ages, across genders, across different countries. And it was fascinating to see, like, it's true. Like, you hold on to things and you are only hurting yourself. And it was a nice kind of validation for me that maybe this doesn't serve me anymore. And I have to kind of let this situation go and start to forgive the people that were involved, but also maybe like forgive myself for how long I have allowed this to impact and take up space in my life. So, ¿qué piensas, Brenda, when you hear that? What do you think about
So many
thinking about
things.
forgiveness?
I think this is fabulous because and what we're gonna do, listeners, is we're gonna link these articles in the show notes so you could take a look and read for yourself. But I think this is awesome, and I had I guess an early lesson in this. So this is the very quick lesson on this, but as people might know, I was married before. It was a very short marriage, but and it ended because of an affair. And I remember very early on, like the weight that was lifted when I decided to not hold any like like rancor, right, against the woman and the man, obviously my ex-husband. It was such a like physical release to just like forgive. And not that I took him back, the marriage was over, but definitely for me, it felt really liberating for me, the benefits of just saying, well, I'm moving on from this, and I see no benefit in resenting these people. So I had an early lesson with this. And the other thing that this, you talking about this makes me think of is like, I've been watching this show, and it's not great because I'm telling you, there's not really much on TV, but this is the show that I've been watching lately. It's called Feud. It's on FX. Somebody very generously let me have their Disney Plus password a long time ago. So through it, now I get Hulu. And so I watched this, and I really enjoy it because it's about, it's called Feud, and it's about Capote. And more than anything, I just love that it takes you into this world of like the 50s New York socialites. But it ended basically with the point is it ended with one of the main characters saying like, because I'm dying, she was dying, I really don't want to hold any resentment, and I'm going to forgive this. Many people did her wrong, but she forgave Capote specifically. And she had a great line about how this is for me, like I'm going to die, and like I'm not going to carry this rancor as I go to die, So I love that. I think that's very timely, and it's an important lesson and a hard lesson to learn because, of course, especially when we're hurt, or and I love the point that you make of sometimes it's like forgiving ourselves, that might even be harder. So yeah, really, really great.
Oh, totally. And what's really interesting too is like, I didn't realize I was holding on to this. Like I've talked about this, maybe a few times in the past 10 years or something. A situation, it was mostly like a friend breakup.
Oh, which can be even harder, honestly. Seriously.
Yes. And like, there's so much emotion wrapped up around like having a friendship that was so strong kind of part, right? I didn't realize how much I had been holding on to it until I saw myself kind of from a third party still talking about it with this person who was so lovely, kind of listening to me and, being there. But I realized, I think what really sparked my attention was like, this person knows this story. I've told her this story before. Why are we doing this twice?
I love that. As you were telling the story, at first I was saying, at first I was thinking that you were noticing that you told the story and then wondering if you already told that person, because I have that problem, especially with this podcast. I'm like, did I already tell listeners about this? And I was hoping that you had found an article that had developed some sort of app that could tell you already told this person.
Oh my God, I wouldn't be able to speak at all because I definitely love, I'm somebody that has specific topics that interest me. So I will go on and on about the same thing. So maybe we need that app. Maybe we need
that app. AI, welcome, please. Get in my brain if you help me from telling somebody's story for the fourth time. Well, this is awesome. Well, okay, so I'll share my article. So you got us like a good article about the spiritual, the mental. So here's one about the physical. So the physical. So this was I heard this on NPR, and there's an article about it, and I of course will link it in the show notes. So the article is called "Women Who Do Strength Training Live Longer, but How Much Is Enough?" Well, it's got some really cool information. One is that it's unclear why, but women that do strength training have greater benefits sooner than men. So it takes just a little bit of effort for us women to incorporate some strength training to already have great benefits. So a big important quote from the article is a new study finds women who do strength training exercises 2 to 3 days a week are more likely to live longer and have a lower risk of death from heart disease compared to women who don't do any strength training. So, and then again, like I mentioned, there's more in this article about the benefits that women experience more so than men. And this isn't like, you might think, okay, what gym sponsored this research? And it wasn't a gym. The study's author is the director of preventive cardiology at Cedars-Sinai here in LA. And the study finds that there's a reduction of 30% in cardiovascular mortality if you just do a little bit of strength training 2 to 3 days a week. So this caught my eye because, as listeners know, I've talked about this, that I am a group fitness instructor, and that's almost basically all I do. I don't really and it's been a while since I've done other things besides just go teach my class, which I teach 3 times a week at least, sometimes 4. And it isn't a big lift, but we have a good mix of a little bit of lifting, a little bit of resistance, but also some cardio. And we pack a lot in 45 minutes. And I myself have felt really great just doing that. And so hearing this article and the data and the science behind it was really refreshing. So other reasons to do strength training: it controls our blood sugar, it boosts our mood, it protects against injuries and falls because you're strengthening your joints, also protects your joints. So these are all some of the benefits of just doing a little bit of strength training. And it doesn't mean you have to go hard. And I think a lot of people are very intimidated about the idea of lifting, but it could be as simple as, and in my class, we always do very simple moves, are easy to follow. But even if you're like somebody that works out a lot, or you're a beginner, the moves are easy, but we're doing so many reps and mixing it up that you will see benefits in my class, and here's some of the data behind it. So if you want to learn more about being introduced to strength training, please reach out to me. And there's a new page on our website. It's called tamarindopodcast.com/workout. And that's where I'll be posting my schedule for when you can take my class. And one of the gyms that I teach, my class is completely virtual. So wherever you're listening, you all can drop in to this class from wherever you are. It's also on demand. And you could also reach out to me about personal training. So I just want to let you all know that that's another resource that you have here on Tamarindo.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I want to talk about this a little bit because, Brenda, it's interesting. My mom, she did manual labor for a really long time. And she had gotten to the point where when she would come home from work after a long day, like I had to physically help her get back into the house. Like she couldn't move. And on the weekends, she was sort of like, she hated it because she's such an active person, but she would be in bed a lot. And she decided to get a trainer and start working out, which was a big investment for her. And it was also a big investment of time. But I have seen it now. She's been doing this now for about 5 years. And I can tell you, I have never seen such a major transformation in somebody. Like my mom is incredibly strong, and she feels strong, and she can do so much. It doesn't need any support anymore. It was amazing to see because my whole life, I think, especially growing up in LA, I had thought of working out as like, oh, so that I can look, the way people expect me to look or something like that. But seeing it be something that can maintain and transform your well-being for, years into the future, it has been really impactful for me to see. And I actually started this week, as you know.
Yes.
Yeah.
How's it going? Well, welcome to coming back to that.
I was scared. I was really scared. But I have to say, shout out to people like you, Brenda, because there was a lot of like animo that I got from the trainer. A lot of like, oh my God, this is great. You can do more. Look at you, And I felt really good. I felt really empowered. So almost at how it goes. I'm going back on Saturday.
That's great. And so thank you for sharing your story about your mom, because I think it also underscores that at any age we can decide to make that investment into our bodies. And it's not about losing weight or about vanity. It really is about protecting our joints, being able to reach for things, being able to walk longer, protecting ourselves from injury. And then also just like feeling good. Like it literally makes you feel good to just add a little bit of movement. If you want to start with just going on a walk, I always tell people, pretend you have a dog if you don't have one. You have to walk that dog 3 times a day. So just get out 3 times a day and do that. Let me turn off my phone because I don't know who's texting me. Okay. Okay, so now I'll bring us back to, okay. That was awesome. So it was great to hear what article caught your eye and able to share that with our listeners. Now, the other thing that's on my mind, this is sort of like a continuation to what we talked about in our last episode, where I was feeling, my basura was this feeling, this like ickiness, like, oh, we're here again in election year. And for folks that might be new to Tamarindo, the Tamarindo story is that this podcast started because I was fed up with the way our country was like accepting Trump as a nominee. And look, he became our president, and now we're at risk again. This is our third time facing this, where he could be the president again. And so, but the energy is so different. It's so different because we're different from 4 years ago, where we were so relieved to have Biden. Now we've got this angst, I think, collective angst about the direction that our country is taking. So I decided to phone a friend. Like let's get some insight. Let's hear from an expert that has been basically the go-to person when people want to talk about the Latino vote, and that is Chuck Rocha. And you'll hear from him in just a little bit for a brief conversation with him on his thoughts on the election and how he's consoling me, and how we should maybe think about how we're talking to each other about this election. So let's hear from Chuck Rocha now. Hey, Chuck Rocha, it's so great to have you here on Tamarindo. Welcome.
So happy to be here.
Yes, and for folks that are listening, you might recognize the voice. I know we see you and hear you in a lot of different places, whether it's commenting on CNN, Meet the Press, whatever. I know that you're out there making the circuits, like running around. So I want to know, for our listeners that may not know you, what do you do and why do you do it?
Well, I'm a national senior political consultant. My better half, Ebony, tells me all the time, people don't know what the hell you do. Like, what is a consultant? Like, what does a consultant do? What does a campaign consultant do? Look, the way to explain that is I own a company that helps people run elections or organizations. You have to hire somebody to make the TV ad. You have to hire somebody to make the mail piece or make the digital ad, and then come up with the strategy of who should get those, when they should get those, when those should come down, when you should swap them out for other creative. This is what we do. But what makes our firm very different from the other political consulting firms is we're the largest Latino owned and operated consulting firm doing this work in the nation. So over the last 14 years of having the firm, we've hired, trained, and mentored over 130 young Black and brown operatives in the space. And that's what I'm the most proud of.
Perfect. Yes. And this is why you're often tapped to comment on the Latino vote, right? The Latino vote, which we already know is not a monolith. We've heard it all before. But what I wanted to do is get your take, because I think a lot of our listeners are join me in feeling really frustrated and a little bit uninspired, because here we are again with Trump and Biden. And it's a very different feeling, because 4 years ago, I think a lot of us were very motivated to ensure that Trump doesn't get reelected. And that made us be super excited to go out and knock on doors and make donations, whatever it took to make sure that Trump didn't get reelected. And yet here we are again facing the exact same possibilities. But what I'm hearing is that people are just not excited, and they're incredibly frustrated with Biden. And to make matters worse, he recently called immigrants illegal aliens, right? Illegals. He used the term illegals and fell right into a trap that was laid for him. So I want to see what words of advice can you give me and our listeners of how do we stay in the game? How do we stay motivated? What's going to really resonate as maybe we are ready to vote, but how do we get others to feel as jazzed and as inspired and as motivated as we might have felt 4 years ago?
You have to segment all that stuff out. I mean, everything that you're saying is true, but it's not true for everyone. And it's more true at other levels. There's the voters, or let's start even lower than that. There's the population. Because a lot of our voters don't vote. There's a half of Latinos. Hell, there's almost half of white and Black people too. Let's be clear. There's a big chunk of America who just doesn't participate in our democracy. So there's the electorate and then there's the population, and then there's activists and commentators and folks that are really following the minutia of this every single day. And that's not most voters. And what I try to tell people and what I hear in focus groups, no matter what word was used at the State of the Union, no matter what Trump stupid thing he's done, no matter what Biden has done or not done, people at their core, and lots of Latino voters. The Latino vote is made up of Latino voters. There's not a Latino vote, as me and you've talked about, and me and you both say, but there are lots of Latinos who vote. And what they want is they want their lives to be better. They want to achieve what everybody's wanting to achieve, which is the American dream. There's lots of obstructions in their own personal life that stand in their way, which make them feel more positive or negative towards one party or one candidate. At the end of the day, every man and woman, every Latina, Latino out there wants to be able to have a good job, make enough money to take care of their family. Maybe if they're fortunate to be able to help take and send their kids to college, they want their bread to be cheap. They want their gas to be cheap. They want healthcare to not be expensive. They want what most other Americans want. It just happens that most of our folks are from all these different beautiful countries in Latin America and Mexico. We're a lot younger than the average population. The average age of a black or a white voter is in their 40s. The average age of a Latino voters are in their high 20s. We're just a younger demographic who is not as immersed in the political process as black and white America. So it takes a little more for us to understand, why should we vote? What's the difference in the parties? What are we literally going to get by voting for a Democrat? We've been told by our mothers and our grandmothers that we're supposed to be Democrats because we're all Democrats. That was right up until a few years ago when 70 and 80% of all Latinos were Democrats, and most of the older population is still a Democrat. What's changed is we are coming of age so much faster. So our demographic is younger. And then the last point I'll make is the change in the way that we consume information. When I was a young man in East Texas, there was 3 TV channels. And if the president was making a statement, he was on all 3 of them, and I couldn't watch any cartoons. It was just a dominant space of 3 or 4 channels. Now that media is segmented over hundreds and thousands of channels, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, all the things, Hulu, Netflix. So now it's even harder to actually reach people to tell them why they should vote for politician A or B and what politician A or B is even doing to make their life better. So you have less people getting less information, so they don't know what the hell any of the parties are really doing, especially if you're a 25-year-old Latino in East LA who, is just not on TV or has a desktop at their house.
Well, this doesn't give you much hope. This kind of lays out some of the challenges, right? Some of the challenges. And you did mention that our electorate, the Latino voters, a lot of folks are very young, and they're feeling really disillusioned with Biden when it comes to Palestine. What if you were there with Biden and able to say, okay, here's how you reach this demographic? What should he be focusing on?
Well, first you have to show up where they're at. And so much of our advertising dollars, again, is spent on older people that we know are going to vote. Because in my profession, they don't want to waste any money on somebody who might vote. And they want to spend a lot of money on the folks that they know will vote, which is mainly older people. Hence why they buy so many TV ads on network news channels, because old people like me want to know what the weather's going to be tomorrow and what's going on with the traffic. And that's just a bottom line. So you got to go show up on social media feeds. You have to text people things that you want to tell them. You need to have influencers on TikTok, where so many young Latinos are gathering information when the U.S. Congress wants to ban it and passed the law yesterday in the House. It still has to go to the Senate and to the president. So all these communications are so fragmented that they're not hearing anything. And then when it comes to the Middle East and these younger voters that are not happy with what Biden has been doing, well, at least Biden is listening to them. And at a certain point, there'll need to be a contrast, because the other option is you can vote for Donald Trump, who literally wants to ban Muslims from being in this country, who literally will do 10 times worse for anybody that's Palestinian than what you're seeing right now with a common sense approach that the president's trying to do by keeping everyone happy and calling out genocide and trying to hold Netanyahu's feet to the fire. At least he's doing that. It may not be at the level that you or that young Latino really want, but at least you have a president who kind of understands what's going on. If they get Donald Trump, you haven't seen anything yet, because he's a crazy man when it comes to this stuff. And I don't worry about young people going and voting for Donald Trump. And I think this is your point. I worry about them skipping it or not showing up.
Yeah, no, I think that's exactly right. And I hope listeners listen carefully. If we stay home, it's not like things are going to get any better. It's only going to get worse because then we have Trump to deal with. So that's a really important point. All right. So I'm hearing that it's not going to be easy. I'm hearing that especially it's very difficult to reach our demographic because the media is so split up. So I hope that y'all listening, if you're frustrated with like the way I'm feeling, it's because it's by design, right? It's by design that we're definitely dealing with a lot. And thank you. I think you've already provided some helpful things to center our talking points on, into realizing that we can't allow Trump to continue to get elected because it isn't going to make things any better. And at least with Biden, we've got someone that we can hold with. We can actually hold their feet to the fire because the other one's not even going to take off his shoes. Okay.
Right. Great.
So yeah, so now something we do on the show is we throw something in la basura, and then we also celebrate something with a matraca. So when it comes to presidential elections or this campaign year, what goes in la basura? What are you sick of seeing? What are you done with?
That's a great question. I think I'm done with trying to spend so much time and energy trying to persuade a white person in the suburbs to leave Donald Trump and come vote for Joe Biden when there are 10 times as many young Latinos and young Black kids who may not have a perfect voting record, that if we take that dollar, it goes further. And there's this constant debate in the party of, do you go try to get all these people and persuade them back, or do you go get some people who aren't really voting and get them into the system? And I think we can do both at the same time, but I don't want to hear somebody else talk about making another TV ad to persuade another white woman away from Donald Trump when we could be spending that dollar to get a young Latino to show up.
I love that. And then what I want folks to hear, this is why campaigns have to spend a lot of money, because they have to hire strategists like you to help them. And I love the message that those dollars can be wasted trying to persuade a white woman, or they could be invested in getting a young voter on your side. So I love that. So y'all listen to that. And so on the other end, what is your matraca? What is something you're celebrating or that makes you hopeful about this presidential year, this election year?
It starts with, for the first time, a Latina being the campaign manager of a presidential race. There have been one or two in the primaries, but not in the general. Julie Chavez Rodriguez being at the head of the Biden campaign gives me lots of hope. Julie's my sister. Her family has a long lineage in California with the Farm Workers Union. She understands struggle. She understands unions. She understands workers, farm workers. And, at the end of the day, I want somebody running campaigns that understands my community and my struggle, right? You may not agree with me, and we may disagree on small things. But if you come from my campaign, from my community, you probably want the same thing as me as the end result, which is the best for my community. We may have 2 or 3 different ideas on how we get to that point, but at least we want to end at the same point. So that gives me hope. And the second thing is, the Democratic Party now at the national level is waking up to understand that Latinos are younger, like I've talked about. They're listening to me now and others, and they're spending more money and being more intentional at the national level. I still think at the local level, there's a lot of problems with white consultants trying to figure out Latino communities. But at the national level, at the DCCC, at the DNC, at the DS, all the DSs and all the things, they have hired a lot of wonderful young and middle-aged Latinos and Latinas who are helping them develop strategies. And that's exactly what the old heads like me with all this gray on their face have been saying for a long time. And now it's actually starting to happen. And that's very exciting for me.
I love that. I love ending with matracas to Latinas leading and to what you're seeing, giving us a glimpse of what you're seeing on the national side of folks like you providing that guidance on how to communicate with our community. So with that, thank you so much for dropping in on Tamarindo. We appreciate your insights.
Keep up the great work, and thanks for having me.
All right. So Chuck, I don't know if he very much encouraged me. I mean, I think he paints a reality picture of like some of the complexities of reaching young Latino voters, especially. So you all, talk to your nieces, your nephews, get people motivated. We need to invest in young voters because hopefully they become lifetime voters. So y'all, let's keep at it. Let's keep at it. All right. Before we dive into our Basuras Matracas, I know we've got some announcements. So Delsy, why don't you take it away with our first announcement?
Yeah, I want to say, listeners, if you are in the LA area and you're thinking, okay, I need to make some new friends here, I need to meet some new people, or you're just interested in having a really fun night where you meet a lot of folks that might be like-minded, maybe listeners of the show, then I want to remind you to come to our event called Amigas Blossoming. Your last chance to register is this week is it this week, Brenda? Would you say
I guess so. I mean, they could register as as late as the day of, but this just could be like space is limited, so don't miss out. You could say something.
Okay,
like that.
I just want to remind you all about our event, Amigas Blossoming, that's happening on March 28th at the Pop Hop. Register at tamarindopodcast.com/events. Space is limited, so if you can head over and register, there are different tiers. So if you would like the event to be free, that's also possible. We will be there, and we cannot wait to see you. So come on over to Amigas Blossoming.
Yes. We're so excited to see the folks that have already registered. So come on and join us. And the other announcement that we want to share is that it's been a while since we've received a love note from our listeners. And that is, our love note is an Apple Podcast review. And let me tell you that's the currency of podcasts. If you know, and you probably heard this from all the other podcasts you listen to, this is the way that people discover new shows. This is the way that you share with others that this episode and this podcast matters to you. So please just take a few minutes, maybe even just a couple, and go find your Apple Podcast app and rate us, or whatever. You can also rate us and review us on whatever platform you listen to, and write us 5 stars and write us a review. And if you have feedback, you can always reach us at contact@tamarindopodcast.com. We would love to hear from any one of you. All right. So after these announcements, we're ready to close out our show. So let's start with the basuras, because there always could be a little bit fun. So why don't you go ahead and tell us what your basura is, Delsy?
Yeah, I want to say my basura is this idea that somehow you are limited in your dreams by age, right? That once you hit a certain age, your dreams are kind of behind you. I think that's a general consensus or a general feeling that we get from our media and from our mainstream culture. But I've been looking into, I don't know if you watched Naiad, Brenda.
Loved Naiad. Yes, it was a wonderful film. Y'all got to watch it on Netflix right away.
Yes, and after you watch something like that, you go crazy looking into these folks and their real life stories. So I went down a rabbit hole, like looking up Diana Naiad's life and watching interviews with her and all kinds of things. And it just made me realize, like, that I also held this idea as I'm going, wait, she couldn't do this when she was 27, but she wants to do it when she's 60. I also had that thought. And to watch her after 4 times accomplish this insane thing, if you haven't watched it, she's a swimmer. And I just killed it for everybody. Maybe I shouldn't say that.
Well, we all know it's a biopic, so folks know, right? They know how it ends in a good way.
To be able to swim, right? I think she still might be the only person in the history of humanity to accomplish this, to the swim from Cuba to the Key West, Florida.
She was definitely the first. I think there might be others, but she was definitely the first, although there are some naysayers. But look, if you watch the movie, she deserves all the recognition.
Yes, and this idea that, people thought this was impossible for a human body. And so the idea that I got from this was like, yeah, you can be any age and decide that you want to push yourself or you want to do something. And it doesn't necessarily have to be this insane thing, right? But a dream that you have that you want to accomplish at any age. And so basura to any kind of preconceived ideas that I had and that folks have about what you can accomplish at different age stages in your life.
Love it. Well, speaking of Nayad, as we all know, Annette Bening was nominated for an Oscar for this, which she didn't win, which is kind of a bummer. But Emma Stone also really, really did a great job. So it was a really, really tough competition. I bring that up because my basura is got a little bit to do with the Oscars. Did you watch the Oscars, by the way, Delsy?
Yes, I did. And I just want to say I'm team Killers of the Flower Moon. And so this was a very disappointing Oscars for me, but that's okay. Go ahead.
Yes, for the first time in many years, I went to an Oscar watching party and actually watched it on a television. I think it's been forever since I watched something live on a television that isn't like World Cup. And we had like little score, like little like sheets to like guess everything. I was wrong in almost everything, and I was definitely disappointed about America Ferrera not winning and other things that were a big bummer. But I have to say, this is what goes in La Basura for me. So, as we all know, Ryan Gosling killed it by singing "I'm Just Ken," and has obviously been running around going to all the award shows. And I was in a room of señoras, and that includes me, but all Latinas as we were watching the Oscars, and then also sort of like the subsequent chatter after the Oscars. And I heard more than once, like muchas criticonas, about Eva Mendes like not being with her man, like why isn't she by his side at these award shows, and just so much like envidia and hate for Eva Mendes. And then I did the worst thing you could ever do, and just like read the comments on posts about Eva, and just people like, why isn't she with her man? Like just so much critique for Eva Mendes not being next to Ryan Gosling at the Oscars and not going out and walking the red carpet, even though she clearly was at the Oscars, because there's footage of her from backstage. She put in her stories. She wore the pink jacket, so she's there. I have to say, like, think about what it takes to go to the Oscars. First of all, most of these celebrities like don't eat for 2 days. They have to hire a stylist, a hairdresser, a pedicurist, everything, right? Everything. And then they have to like walk around, and some of the celebrities, because the protesters were able to disrupt the Oscars as they should, they had to be dropped off further, and they had to walk from far away. Think about that nightmare. If you were Eva Mendes, would you fucking want to do that? I don't think so. She deserves to be backstage and relax.
Totally. But also, like, think about this. She chose not to be in the spotlight and still has endless negative comments about her. Can you imagine what she understands fully at this point, what she's opening herself up to? And who knows what the motivation was? Maybe she just no se le dio la gana y ya. Right?
Yeah, exactly. It's exactly what I was thinking. Is like, mira, no wonder she doesn't go. Because if she does go, you're going to be like, oh, who does she think she is, walking next to her man, stealing the spotlight? Like, you're going to criticarla no matter what. Delsy, have you ever gone to a wedding where your partner is in the wedding, but you are not in the wedding?
I have not.
Well, it sucks. Let me tell you, it sucks. And that would be the equivalent of Eva Mendes going to the freaking all the award shows, because it's his bit. He's the one that is going to be asked the question. He's got to go take a photo. He's got to go do the little plug. She wouldn't even be with him. Like, I have been to weddings where Jeff's in the wedding. It freaking stinks when your date is running around, got to do the pictures, got to do all that shit, and you're just by yourself. And it's like, where's Jeff? It's annoying. So basura to the people that criticize Eva Mendes. Eva Mendes, watch your man from wherever perch you want to watch him. That is my basura.
Yes. Okay. You know what? I totally agree. And now I'm going to be more conscious of giving Eva Mendes love. The other day, I just had somebody saying terrible things about Jennifer Lopez near me. And I was getting so up in arms, and I didn't even realize I cared that much. I was like, no, we cannot talk about these people this way.
At the end of the day, they're people. Who knew?
They're people. Sí. Okay.
Okay. What's your inspiración?
You know what? It's so funny because my inspiración also has to do with the Oscars. I want to talk about Lily Gladstone. Can I just profess my love for Lily Gladstone? I think that she is so incredible in her acting. She has such a unique presence about her, such a strength. Aside from Killers of the Flower Moon, she was also in an episode of Reservation Dogs. I don't know if you watched
yes.
that.
Yes, and I loved that character. Yeah, she's sort of like the spiritual connect from jail, which I think is wonderful. Yes.
But the way that she presents on camera is just so incredibly it's almost like I see somebody that I've known when I see her. I don't know what it is, but it's just I think the way she's represented this film and the way that she has represented the Osage Nation. I mean, she's not from that nation, but she is representing their stories, and she's doing a really beautiful job of bringing them in. And one of the things she said about the Oscars was that she thought that the Osage performance made extreme sense because it is their story. And so to have them on stage in this beautiful kind of moment, I was just really proud to see her handle this massiveness with so much grace. So matraca to Lily, although she didn't win, she 100% kind of captured my heart, and I think the hearts of a lot of people.
Yeah, I love that. I love that source of inspiración. I think I have a couple little tidbits of inspiración. Back to the Oscars, even though America didn't win her Oscar, I loved the way that at the Oscars, and I think apparently somebody told me that they did this last year, but this was my first time experiencing this, the way past Oscar winners talked about each one of the nominees rather than them playing, the little tidbit of like the little clip of their performance. I thought that was wonderful. And of course, this is all over our internet feeds, but seeing Rita Moreno celebrate America, that was wonderful. Like America didn't take home the Oscar, but she was able to take this moment, and it was a reminder, and the big headline that America did this monologue from the most talked about monologue in the most talked about film. So that was definitely inspirational, and I'm very excited to see what else Lily does, what else America does. Like this is hopefully the beginning of more screen time of women that look a little bit different than Emma Stone, that look a little bit different than Barbie. So I'm excited to see more of that. The other source of inspiration, you all, a couple episodes ago, we had Leo Mio, and I can't tell you all how amazing it was to get to interview Leo. I hope you all enjoyed their story, and this is sort of fresh to me because I've also written a little bit about Leo for Latina Media Co., so that should be coming out shortly. So it was another opportunity to kind of bask in the talent that is Leo. And if you follow Leo Mio on Instagram, they also recently wrote an article. We'll go ahead and link this in the show notes about their ongoing journey with medical transition and how that has impacted the way that they see themselves when it comes to sex and their voice. Really great piece. You all have to read that. And I just want to remind you all to keep following these artists because they're just getting started. I'm really excited to see what else everyone that we've talked about on this episode today, that we celebrate on this episode today, is going to keep on doing. So with that, y'all, we hope to see you soon. Por favor, share this episode with a friend and pon tu suéter.
Y saludos a la familia.
Ciao. Tamarindo Podcast is Brenda Gonzalez and Delsy Sandoval. We are also the show's executive producers. Karina Riveroll of Sonoro Media provides production support. Jeff Ricards wrote our theme song. The best way to support our work is to rate and review Tamarindo Podcast or share an episode with a friend. Get in touch with us at tamarindopodcast.com.